Stop. Don't go anywhere too fast. It's time to listen to a Head Over the Footy podcast.
Well, guess what, Charlie? We're going to start the show right now. Okay. You've just complimented me for the interview that Caleb Sarong did on Head Over the Footy.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good one. And I'll tell you what, how good is the footy that he is playing?
Yeah.
He's the leading disposal getter in the comp. And welcome, Samuel Gill. Welcome, Charlie. Max Hatzoglou speaking now. Well, the show's already started.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, we're on. We're on.
That's an awkward
We're
introduction.
talking about Caleb Sarong, and he's a leading player in the AFL for clearances and leading possession getter. Unbelievable. He's had about 75 clearances and he averages 33 disposals a game. Like, just think about that for 1 second. He's one of the leading contenders for the Brownlow, and we had him on that very seat that you're sitting on, Charlie Gill. How does that feel?
Good. Yeah. He could win the Brownlow.
He could. Isaac Heaney, I think, is the one that's ahead of everyone. But yeah.
Him and Butters, I think, are the two that have sort of gone against the rule of to be a star midfielder these days, you need to be super tall.
Yeah.
And you just see.
Oh, there's heaps of players that go against that, I reckon.
Yeah, but not they're stars, but they're not at that super high level. I'm thinking about Taylor Adams and guys like that who are guns, but they're not that elite player.
What about Merritt?
Yeah, Merritt's a bit of an exception.
But they're definitely, you're right, Sam. They're who?
Matt Rowell.
Rowell's a bit taller, isn't he?
No, he's pretty short.
No,
but there definitely was a phase. But Rowell is a recent player. Before Rowell and Sarong, there was a phase where it was Cripps, Dangerfield, Fife, all the tall big players, Bont, they were all getting the credit. But now, you're right, Sammy. Zach Butters, he was a star last season, having another pretty good season. Sarong, he's killing it. Merritt's been good.
Yeah, Merritt's been good. He's come off a bit the last couple of weeks, but he'd still be second or third.
I wasn't on last week, but did you talk about Zach Butters' fourth quarter against Hawthorn?
So you weren't on last week and you didn't listen.
Yeah, true. I just told on myself. Did you speak about it?
Shocking.
Sorry.
No, we didn't.
Well, there you go. That's why I didn't listen, because that had to be mentioned.
Well,
that was one of the craziest quarters of footy I've ever seen anyone play.
Yeah.
He had 17 touches. He just dragged them over the line against Hawthorn, which is the craziest match. The craziest
17
ending,
touches in that last quarter.
Which is the craziest ending to a footy game I reckon I've ever seen.
As crazy as Collingwood Fremantle on Friday night, because that was pretty crazy.
It was crazy.
Well, that was for different reasons.
And that's our top story of the round.
But yeah, okay. And we'll get to that round, but I just want to mention, just to at least acknowledge that Hawthorn Port Adelaide game, because it was so crazy. I was just watching it, Sunday afternoon. I always like watching those, even if they're bad games, because they just feel nice on a cold Sunday.
Yeah. And
I just didn't turn it off because I thought, anything can happen. And then they were down by 11 points with 30 seconds left. How did they win?
I don't remember any other game where a team's kicked 2 goals in 30 seconds to win.
Yeah.
And Willie Rioli was so clutch. He just went straight back and
loved the way he did it very quickly.
The thing, I think people pointed it out, but I just couldn't believe how, if you freeze frame that last centre bounce stoppage, you have Butters, Willem Drew, and I can't remember who the other midfielder is for Port Adelaide in that centre bounce, but they were all at high speed, just cutting across the centre square, whereas all the Hawthorn players were sort of stagnant and stayed still. And you're just what was Will Day doing? Why wasn't he on Butters?
Yeah, you'd think man on man there, just literally hold him by the jumper. Even if you give away a free kick there, time ticks over, and then the ball has to get back to the player. The player has to push back behind the mark. If you're smart there, you'd pay a free kick. Anyway, I know that there's advantage, but anyway.
They were terrified.
That was round 10. Now, round 11 was perhaps a round that was being taken over by the umpiring in that Collingwood-Freo game. It was a draw, and we all know what happened. Nick Dacos, Lockie Sullivan passed the ball to Nick Dacos, and then the umpire, Nichols, blew the whistle and said free kick, and I think it was Sean Darcy took the free. And there's been a big uproar because since we never see these decisions get called. We never see them get called. And this is what the AFL said in a statement to...
Disagree.
This is... Yeah, well, we have seen it, but we rarely ever see them.
We haven't seen in the fourth quarter like that close to the end of a match yet.
Probably. No, and we rarely see it in any quarters. But this is what, in my view. Anyway, in a statement to Fox Footy, the AFL clarified the free kick was officiated correctly, while time-wasting infringements have been penalised 4 times already this season. So that was the 5th time a time-wasting infringement had been penalised, okay? The league said... Now, I don't know how there was time-wasting because how much time did it waste? 0.0000001 of a second? Great, okay, yep. We're going to be paying time-wasting free kicks every 30 seconds in a game then, if that's the case. Anyway, the league said it cracked down on time-wasting in 2022, which is good. There was a crackdown, so players should be aware of all this. But 2022 was a crackdown, which, to my mind, I can't... If it's a crackdown, like I'd know about it, you would know about it. A lot of people would.
True. Yeah.
So call it a crackdown. Well, if it's a crackdown, actually crack the surface. Like, it's not really a crackdown.
Yeah.
So anyway, they sent a warning to clubs after noticing a trend that allowed teammates to set up better. So that's like, you give away a free kick or you get caught holding the ball and you hold the ball on you.
Yeah.
You don't give it straight back. That's time wasting, right? Not what happened in this fourth quarter in the Collingwood-Freo game. That's not time wasting.
Do you reckon?
This is an absolute dreadful decision from Nichols. And I'm a big fan of this time wasting rule. I'm loving this crackdown that the AFL are talking about here and time wasting. When someone gets caught for holding the ball, or different things like a high tackle, you give a high tackle and you hold the player in you so that he can't get up and take the free kick. That's time wasting. What happened in this quarter was not time wasting, and that's what this rule is about. It's a time wasting infringement. Did this player waste time? Like, seriously, he did not waste one bit of time, and it's resulted in like a draw. Well, it didn't result in the draw. It didn't cause the result to happen, but Freo kicked 4 goals in the last 5 or so minutes of that game, and they got the draw.
I'm not sure whether that necessarily, like that specific instance with, was it Sullivan, was time wasting or not. Like, I'm not sure what he was thinking in his head, but I saw a clip because I was like, yeah, that seems like a weird role when I saw it. But then I saw a clip that, I don't know, one of the footy shows did, and it showed like 5 or 6 instances of that happening this year and then paying a free kick. It just hadn't happened in like a close game in the last quarter.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite like, not karma, but like divine justice for last week with the Rankin one. Whereas that's a rule that you can't run too far, and he ran too far, but like you don't really see that paid that often, but it's still a rule.
Yeah.
And it's just been on the flip side, and now Collingwood are on the other side of it.
The only thing is the rule. It's time wasting, right? So
does the clock start? Was the clock rolling when he passed it to Davis?
No. The umpire blows the whistle. I believe that the clock stops at that point.
You'd have more time to set up.
But it's time wasting in terms of the length of the quarter.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah, but the thing is right, that they say the letter of the law. Now, the letter of the law is the player can't pass it to another player before getting it back to the umpire.
Yeah.
Because it's time wasting.
Yeah.
But, like, the common sense, if Lockie Sullivan did a 180 to give it back to the umpire there, it actually would have taken longer for the ball to get to the umpire than if he just passed it to Dacos, who was right in front of him, and Dacos would have passed it to the umpire. That would have actually been the quicker way of getting the ball back to the umpire. But
if you look at it also, I don't feel sorry at all for Sullivan or Collingwood in this situation, because I feel like it is a rule. Then you can get unlucky when the rule's paid or not. And I think Collingwood it's almost a compliment to Collingwood, because they're a very smart football team. And they know how to milk a clock. Like, you see them scramble.
No, they're not milking the clock here.
You see them scramble. Like, they can keep the ball in. They're very good. I think they're very well coached. And I think there's all those little things, like even side bottom. That was the one that was talked about where Nichols did kind of like a side eye at him because he didn't handle the ball
earlier
back.
in the game.
Yeah, earlier in the game. And I think Collingwood are very good at protecting a small lead and protecting the clock.
Definitely.
And I think they're very coached. So I think that the umpires just called them out on it this time.
Yeah, it is quite cunning if they do that. I hadn't thought about it that way. But maybe, when Sidebottom refused to give the ball back to Nichols, he was doing that because it would take seconds down. And even though when I first saw the Sullivan thing, I thought it was like, that's just like a young player, like, it's nothing. But, maybe that's why Collingwood are so good, because they've been coached with these little things. I can imagine McRae saying every little second you can get.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, if you look at it, Dacos knew 100%. As soon as he gave him the ball, Dacos knew, oh, fuck. That's a free kick.
It was a good reaction from him.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's about what's next for the players. It's not, you can't change the past.
Yeah,
so good from Dacos.
But I think that it's also interesting just to show how much umpires can hold grudges, because that Nichols thing happened 3 minutes before. And then I think it's clearly probably, in my opinion, why the free was paid.
Okay, so that Sidebottom, when Sidebottom just, Nichols was calling for the
How
ball.
often do you see an umpire look at that, at a play like that, as Nichols does at Sidebottom? Never. Like, when do they umpires ever really express that sort of...
Yeah. So just for the listeners and viewers, we saw this pre-show. So that happened. So 3 minutes before that incident that we all know about, 3 minutes before that, Nichols was going to ball up the ball. Before doing all that, he asked Sidebottom for the ball. Sidebottom put the ball on the ground, which is allowed. Nichols had to go and pick up the ball.
Yeah.
And he had to walk about 2 meters after asking Sidebottom to pass the ball to him. Yeah. And he was shaking his head like an 80-year-old grandfather.
Yeah, he gave him the look that you give like a little kid that's misbehaving.
Yeah.
And Sidebottom would have heard him. And I don't know if it was time wasting, but he would have ignored it.
Well, clearly that was time wasting.
Yeah.
But to the letter of the law, which is your stupid letter of the law argument, right? Common sense. Like, that should have... Letter of the law, like, it's time wasting. It's called time wasting.
Yeah,
are they time wasting? Yes or no?
This conversation...
It doesn't matter if the player puts the ball on the ground, gives it back, gives it to another player. It doesn't matter. If it's time wasting, it's time wasting. If it isn't, it isn't. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but I think
you interpret it. Is it time wasting or is it not? I've umpired the game. I know how it works.
Yeah.
Just make the interpretation. Common sense.
But I think that at first I thought, when I saw the Sidebottom vision, that Nichols was being emotional and was bearing a grudge against Collingwood.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, but now I don't think that. Now I think that actually, it's sort of like what Sam was saying. He was noticed the time wasting done by Sidebottom and noticed it again.
Yeah, I think
even if Sullivan didn't mean to do that, like, Nichols would have been like, oh, Collingwood again doing this at a stoppage.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That Sidebottom stuff definitely had an effect on that big decision that Nichols made 3 minutes later. Clearly, and that's a good pickup.
But maybe the umpires should warn players at the stoppage. Like, if say that instead of just like looking at Sidebottom like that, Nichols should have said, "Don't do that again."
Umpires shouldn't hold grudges. Each decision they have to make is separate.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So big mistake from Nichols. You don't hold grudges.
So they don't let past decisions carry over. You just explain it in the moment.
I think
exactly. Let it deal with it there and then.
Yeah. I'm not sure if the Sidebottom one is technically a free kick though.
No, it's not. It's not, Sam.
Yeah. But the other one was, so he could pay it. So I don't know. I think Collingwood are very good at protecting a lead, and I think it could be a thing that's coached into them.
Yeah,
like you notice it in a close game when they're. I can't remember. There was a couple earlier in the year that, or maybe it was the preliminary final, where they were just so good at just holding it in and like.
Yeah.
And
I actually like these time wasting calls because we see it all the time. Like someone tackles someone high, and instead of letting him go to let him get up and take the free kick straight away, they'll tackle him high and they'll hold on to him for an extra 3-4 seconds.
Yeah.
Which is really smart. But I actually like that with the umpires penalising that because that holds up the game. It results in less scoring.
Yeah.
But what Nichols did on the weekend was a step way too far, and it wasn't even time wasting. I actually like the crackdown on time wasting, but like it's for stuff like that where you pay it. It's not for stuff like that Dacos and Sullivan incident that we saw.
Yeah, when I initially saw it, I was like, that seems pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then I saw it and realised that it had been paid so many times before in games this year. When I saw that little clip, that completely changed my mind. But I do think there is kind of like, a bit of umpires just being a bit overbearing on the game and playing like stupid free kicks, like ones that just give too much back the other way. Like there was one in the Collingwood-Freo game where I think it was on Freo's back flank and they were kicking sort of towards their goal, and Jai Amos like wrapped his defender in the head, and then they paid a free kick, but because the ball was getting kicked on Freo's half back line, it then was a Collingwood free kick on their 50, and then they could kick a goal. And I just thought that was like far too much to give someone a free kick, not even downfield, but like reverse the ball based on something that happens at the other end of the field.
I reckon
Sammy, that was a disastrous decision.
Yeah.
That it wasn't even high.
Yeah.
They were both going at each other and off the ball. It begs the question, do we need 4 umpires?
I've got another question. Do we need a 50-metre penalty?
Well, why don't
we make it 20 metres?
Yes, Charlie.
That's an advantage.
It's an alternative option.
Yeah.
You have your 50 and you have your 20.
Yeah.
I've been banging on for this for years.
Really?
Mate, I've been having to dye my hair. I've been banging on about this. I haven't dyed it at all, by the way, just to clear that up.
Okay.
But Charlie, I've been banging on about this for years because we see 50s and the penalty is just way too harsh for the infringement.
Yeah.
Like, teams are getting free goals based off 50-metre penalties for minor infringements. There are big penalties that deserve 50s, but there are minor ones that only deserve 25.
Yeah.
Let's bring it into the game.
I think just get rid of 50s altogether, just make it all 25.
No, because then there are big infringements that should be 50.
Like what?
Like big infringements.
Such as
smashing
a
someone
player
in the head.
holding someone up.
That's 25 metres.
No,
it's
it's
a
not.
massive advantage.
If it's a big hold up, it's 50. If it's a small one, it's 25.
I'm saying there's too many cogs to turn in the umpires' minds.
No,
they shouldn't have to adjudicate what to give. They should just be like 25. The same way now they just do 50. They pretty much always just do 50 metres, right?
I don't know why they went. They used to be 15.
Yeah,
and then they went from 15 to 50. Yeah.
Well, there we go. That opens the door for the AFL to make the change, because we're not, there's not that traditional argument.
Yeah.
The door's already been opened there.
Yeah.
I tell you what, the umpiring department this week, big week. Laura Kane.
Big week for the umpires.
Laura Kane, huge week.
Laura Kane.
Andrew Dillon as well. I was listening to Talkback Radio today. People are losing their minds about the umpiring.
What about the whole?
Saying they don't want to watch footy anymore.
I've heard that.
People
I've heard
are
that
losing
every.
their minds.
I've heard that every week for the last.
That's bullshit.
20 years.
Yeah.
It's every single week.
People have been threatening to stop watching AFL because of umpires for the last 20 years, and it's never actually happened.
And they've never stopped. They just tuned in every single week like they always do, and then get angry, and it's just a cycle.
You know what though? It's actually so good for the game. All this drama. It's actually so good for the game. Yeah. I know that we don't want it all the time, but like every 3 weeks, like this is perfect for the game.
The AFL love it, and like any news is good news for them.
Yeah,
so that's why sometimes with the tribunal stuff, I just zone out. Like I don't give a fuck if this is high, what's reckless, what's careless, whether some list clogger from Freo gets 1 week or 2 weeks and it's turned into this huge story.
Yeah.
And like I don't get why people care so much about it. It's like, and I don't know if there was a list clogger from Freo this week who got suspended, so I don't want to make offense to that person. I just meant I don't care if just like some random, like in finals, I'm like, it's good to know, but like, it's just like Monday, Tuesday, hearing this news, it just gets boring.
It's because it all contributes to a greater narrative that people like to sort of.
It's about news
buy
cycle.
into.
It's AFL being in the news cycle every day of the week, not just on the weekend.
Yeah, but then they're also inciting people who say that the game's getting too soft and everything, or people who say that it's all debate.
Yeah.
But I agree. I'm a bit tired of it. The constant sort of
conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Of what?
What do you reckon? The AFL hard on concussion is a conspiracy to be in the news more.
No, it's not.
Maybe.
Mate, when you
Is
look
that
at
poor
the money
take?
it's costing them, it's certainly not a conspiracy.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That is a field that's right for some conspiracy theories. I don't know if it's that one though.
Well, it's like the off season. Like, it doesn't need to go for so long, but the AFL love like the fact that you got 3 weeks of trade. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, I'm pretty sure I've heard someone speak about how that period of time they almost make more money from media.
Yeah.
Like, not from TV, obviously, rights of games, but like from radio and stuff than they do in a season.
Yeah,
during
it's
the trade
huge.
period.
Yeah, that's why they're trying to get a mid-season trade period in. At least I don't know who.
And often it's
how far
not
it
it's
is.
not that exciting, is it? Like, compared to the NBA or something where you have stars moving all over the place and there's draft picks flowing. Like, most of the time in the AFL, it's like some guy who's kind of like on the periphery at a club is getting traded.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, what's he gonna get? Early 3rd round pick or a late 2nd
Yeah.
round pick? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, no one
you
cares.
know, they care. It's just interesting when you're working out where a player's going, but then like all the like sort of drama around the actual trading is kind of a bit. Yeah.
Just getting back to the decisions that get made on the weekend. Part of all this is just the AFL. They're always backing in the umpires. They're always saying the correct decision was paid, even though, you know, like they never say, like rarely ever say that it was an incorrect decision.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't an incorrect decision.
Well, that one wasn't, but I'm just saying in general though, with other decisions,
I
like,
guess it's very
even
hard.
when it is incorrect,
and Rankin was correct.
they'll work out a way to say, oh, it was,
They still
it
sometimes-
wasn't the right, but the process that the umpire went through meant that, you know, it was fine. But they'll never sit there and say, yeah, we mucked up, which I just love because, you know, it just winds up supporters even more.
Yeah, a lot of rules are very subjective though, so you could.
Yeah,
like,
you work
can
your way
make
around it.
You can make an argument
Yeah.
for most, unless it's an absolute shocker, or there's something like that you can actually verify, like the ball was touched or something.
Yeah.
That you can say there's like a scale of like what the average football person watching that, whether they say for a holding the ball decision, it would be like usually you watch one holding the ball decision and you could place it on a scale almost of like where the average person would have it, whether they like lean towards holding the ball or lean towards play on.
Absolutely.
And you can, the AFL can claim that, like, you know, it's kind of like up to interpretation.
Yeah, there are probably lots of incidents per year where like people who watch a lot of footy can see the exact same incident and have a different opinion over if it should be holding the ball or not. And that's why the game's so hard to umpire, and that's why I said that it would be a terrible idea to introduce, if you can remember from earlier episodes, a captain's challenge, which Connor Kennedy was pushing so hard for, because it's just not practical.
Yeah.
It just doesn't suit the sport.
Perhaps, but yeah, I don't know. The AFL would argue it's black and white, and every decision, it's, you know, we know what the go is. There's no, you know, I know, but you're right. There's so much grey area. But the AFL will argue we've got a rule book and we've got all bases covered.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Bombers. This is a big game. Dreamtime at the G, always a big occasion, and the Bombers beat Richmond by 12 points. Sammy, your Bombers are flying. They haven't lost a game in how many weeks? How many rounds? I think 7 or 8.
7 weeks,
rounds.
yeah.
One was a draw. The rest were wins. 6 wins and a draw from their last 7 games. The Bombers on fire. Jordan Ridley won the Yorken Trophy. So well done to Jordan Ridley. He had a good game. First game back as well, and he dominated.
Yeah.
That's good effort. First game back.
Yeah, he's a gun. He, like, I think most Essendon supporters will talk about him, and he's probably not known that highly in the league. But I think if he gets a good run of it and we're a decent team, I think he's at 25. He could go on a run of all Australians, in my opinion. And then, yeah, we're still winning. Like, as I said a couple of weeks ago, like, the test would be whether we beat the cellar dwellers by a lot, and we didn't. But we still won. We still won. We beat North by 40, which isn't great, to be honest. But We're still winning, and I don't know if we're going to drop off like last year. We sort of the signal of the end was when we beat North. I think we beat West Coast by a point, and then North by a bit, and then we lost to GWS by 100 and lost to someone else by 100. Or we do a Richmond in 2017 and just keep winning and see what happens. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but yeah, the team's looking okay. Some of our lesser known or more maligned players played well on the weekend. Nick Hind probably played his best game I've ever seen.
25 touches for him, 2 goals.
Jaden Levert.
Ridley, 31 for him, again a goal. He had a game high 31 touches. Who else did you mention there?
Levert turned into Tom Stewart in the last quarter.
31 touches, 4 marks.
Yeah. And I think the big
Meanwhile,
thing...
Tom Stewart's turned into Levert. He's had played so badly the past couple of weeks. No disrespect to Levert. I'm barely familiar with his game. I just had to make the joke.
Yeah. Ben, I think Ben...
Tell you what, if you walked onto the street right now and walked past Levert and he'd heard what you just said, that'd be an interesting
Well, I don't know what he looks like, so it wouldn't be a problem. Yeah,
he knows what you look like after
that. So, do you know one interesting thing about Levert?
Here we go.
I think his draft was 2014 and Collingwood had pick 5 and picked John DeGoey.
Yeah.
And apparently it was a line ball call between Levert and DeGoey at pick 5.
Wow.
And then he was seen as a slider, and I think Essendon picked him up with like pick 17 or something like that.
Oh, wow. So Collingwood were thinking about getting him.
Yeah, they were tossing him up, yeah.
Is this an exclusive or it's already been broken?
I think it's been broken. You have to get onto Kaltumi to verify
Yeah,
it.
it'd be interesting to track how all sliders across the past 10 years have progressed.
Yeah.
Sliders in the draft, I like it.
Because it's always...
I can remember...
it's pretty interesting.
I usually remember them because you sort of look at the drafts.
Well, Caleb Sarong's a slider.
I don't know if he doesn't count
as a
as
he
a
was
slider.
supposed to go pick 2. He
but
went to pick 8.
Yeah,
it's not really a slider.
Not really a slider.
Slider's what? You've got to have a margin of what?
A slider's like dropping down from being considered in the
spots?
top 10 to being taken in the 2nd or 3rd round.
But then there are some what's the opposite of a slider? A riser.
A bolter.
A bolter.
Yeah, like Oliver.
Oliver was a bolter. Bond.
Are these official definitions? Bolter and slider.
Oliver's like the greatest bolter of all time.
Go back to
so Oliver is.
Yeah,
Oliver
he was considered chubby playing in a league. They just told him that he had to start working, and he ended up being taken pick 3. He is now one of Melbourne's greatest.
He didn't
players.
play. He wasn't playing TAC Cup at the start of the year. Wasn't in the championship squad, and then I think he went on a crazy run in the back half of the TAC Cup season, and then went into draft calculations, and then I think Essendon were keen on him. We had 2 picks that year. I think it was Parrish and Francis, and then Melbourne had it wrapped around Wiedemann. They ended up getting Oliver and then Wiedemann, but they were going to take Oliver at pick 8, and that was going to be seen as a bolter. But then Essendon were going to take him, so then they got in ahead of Essendon and took him, and then we got Parrish and Francis. Francis is still knocking around at Sydney. Yeah, I thought he was
Francis
so talented.
Francis is pretty good, but for a top 5 draft pick, pretty good. Probably the average output from a top 5 out pick, you'd think.
Probably a bit under, but
yeah. All right, boys. Harley Reid, that stiff arm he did on Rashali was just insane. And Rashali's not the weakest AFL player going around, and Harley Reid, I don't know how he does it. And one of the commentators said, they were wondering what he bench presses, because that was quite impressive. There's no better stiff arm player in the game than Harley Reid.
Do you think if you were the coach of North Melbourne, you would have tanked that game against Gold Coast?
The coach of West Coast?
No, the coach of North Melbourne. If you were, who was it then?
I think it was Clarkson.
Yeah. If you asked the Clarkson, would you tank the game against Gold Coast, which they were losing by 30 points?
Now, this season?
I'm not suggesting you ask him that in a post-match press conference, because I think you might be barred from.
No, I wouldn't be. It'd be a good. Actually, tanking's
pretty bad.
It's pretty illegal, isn't it?
Yeah.
He was asked at the time, and he said, "No, it's ridiculous." But of course, he's going to say that. But I think at the time he genuinely wanted to win, and they also thought they were going to I think they also thought they could trade for him, or they thought that West Coast might not pick him because of the go home factor.
Yeah.
I actually think that people ridiculing North Melbourne for winning that game against Gold Coast, just no idea what they're talking about. Because like,
so that
you
win
can't
over Gold
tag,
Coast,
like,
that win over Gold Coast put him in second last.
yeah, they
Otherwise, if they lost it, they would have been in last position, and they would have had
West
Harley
Coast
Reid.
won a game they weren't expected to,
West-
and North had the pick, and then North won a game they weren't expected to, and then West Coast got the pick back.
Wow.
And people suggested the North should have tanked that because they were winning by like 5 goals against Gold. They were losing by 5 goals at halftime. But I mean, you can't. They're just unlucky. I just feel bad for North Melbourne supporters. 'Cause imagine
come on.
what it would be like to have Harley Reid.
They're unlucky because they've won a game of football.
No, but they're unlucky to have. Yeah, they are
Yeah,
unlucky.
but who do they get instead of Harley Reid?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. We don't know what's going to happen with. But I mean, they still would have gotten that compensation pick with Ben
They've
Mackay.
had picks 1 and 2.
So like it's just they could have had Harley Reid and
Yeah.
they won a game they didn't mean to. It's just unlucky because you can't expect teams to tag.
The West Coast supporters were also filthy when they won that game against Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Because they thought they were going to lose access to Harley Reid. I saw on like Twitter and stuff, they were very... sorry, had my alarm on my phone. They were very angry about that. And it is interesting when teams are actively going for their team to lose. There was something in the EPL recently where Tottenham were playing, I think, Man City, and their main rivals are Arsenal.
Yeah.
And then I just like went online because I was a bit sort of like, because I knew Tottenham and Arsenal hate each other.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see what they were talking, and they were sort of unanimous in saying that Tottenham can't beat Man City because it means Arsenal will win the league.
Yeah.
And they were like, I don't care, like this. And they were having to go at Ange
Yeah.
for saying we're going to try and win.
Yeah.
I read about this as well, and then there was like a sort of a massive kind of split in the Spurs sort of fan and coaches, because apparently some of the Spurs staffers, like who work for the club, were like vocally apparently wanting to lose or something, and Ange was just like,
well,
what the fuck?
Yeah, well, the rivalry is completely there between Tottenham and Arsenal.
There's a famous Italian one as well where I think it was Lazio, and they had to lose for Roma to also not win the thing. It was something like that. And when they lost, they like held up a massive banner that was just said, "Oh no." Like when they lost, like, oh, whoops. Yeah. So they just don't care.
Well, it's Ange was completely off it. He did not like it at all. And yeah,
But they weren't good enough to beat Man City anyway.
Well, yeah, they weren't, but they could have actually won. But you know, not all the fans were on board with Tottenham winning that one. So that was certainly interesting.
Anyway, yeah, when you've got prospects like Harley Reid, of course, you're going to want to lose as a fan if you're down that end of the ladder.
Yeah. Boys, now just want to mention one thing, and this is Collingwood's injury list. It is remarkable, and they're winning games. They're winning games with some of these players out. Right now, this is their injury list after round 11, after that Freo game. Aidan Begg out for the season. Jack Bytel test. Josh Carmichael TBC. Mason Cox TBC as well. Jordan DeGoey, Jamie Elliott, they're both TBC. Josh Eyre is out. Will Hoskin-Elliott a week. Howe a week. Reef McInnes a week. Dan McStay TBC. Mycheck 3 to 4 weeks. Tom Mitchell 2 to 4. Scott Penderbury TBC. And Oscar Steen, he's out for 8+ weeks. There's some big names out there, and they're doing well. It's just crazy. It's Collingwood. They're a team that you need to watch, I think, big time. You've got Sydney, but they're winning games right now, Collingwood, without...
Yeah, okay. Collingwood have a good system. It's true. That's why you can have these players that come in. I'm jealous of it because Carlton has a lot of injuries as well, but we don't have that system.
Well, you're not winning games as well. You're winning some games, but not compared to Collingwood. And I reckon our injury list is probably... It is worse than yours.
Yeah, okay, but...
But yeah, Carlton's still doing well.
I'm not making comparison between the two. I'm just saying that you have a great system, which is why you can have these role players come in a bit, probably like Richmond did, and you can still win.
Yeah,
those little things Sam was talking about, like just time wasting, just good coaching. Whereas Carlton, who's when we've got players out, it has a bigger difference because we rely so much on their talent.
I don't care how good Sydney are going. I still think Collingwood are premiership favourites until if they're going to make, even if they make top 4. Charlie, what are you doing?
Yeah, oh, sorry.
You're
Just
distracted.
playing around with the guitar.
Oh no, that has to go away, mate. The last time
We're
that
talking about
the
Collingwood
last
again.
time that guitar came out, it was very dangerous.
Yeah,
You go
true.
back and watch the video.
True.
It was Charlie smacking Connor Kennedy, who's he's abroad at the moment. He hung that guitar over your head and he was about to break that guitar.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Go back and watch it. It's actually some great entertainment. Anyway, go on, Sam.
I think Collingwood, if they make top 4, they should be favourites over Sydney.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because
definitely.
Yeah.
because of the MCG factor, Sydney have to come down. They haven't really proven themselves. They'll be nervous in a grand final. Having lost their
Have you
last
seen
3.
Collingwood's fixture? They're playing like 8 of their last 9 at the MCG. This is why everyone hates Collingwood.
Yeah.
Because you get to play every game at the MCG. Whenever something goes against you, it's a massive media storm. It's just non-stop.
Yeah,
it's just relentless.
It's the Eddie Maguire effect.
Yeah.
He just goes
Just
so hard.
The
I heard
Collingwood
him-
machine.
He said that
We're a big club though.
if
Yeah, I know
but
you
so,
are.
but so
Like-
are Carlton and Essendon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
it's not our fault that you guys are playing at Marvel and like
I know.
if you compared your fixture to ours, like
We've
eight,
got to know.
eight of your last 9 games will be in Melbourne.
Carlton has a good.
And it's not at the same venue
Carlton has-
because your home ground is Marvel.
Yeah, Carlton has one of the easiest run homes of any club, but that's because we've had a harder start. Like that's generally how it works. But
Yeah, but in terms of this home ground stuff, like
and Essendon has one of the hardest run homes because they've had an easier start.
yeah, and that's fine. But it all.
But somehow Collingwood always has a great run home.
If you speak to the boss of the fixture, he will say that they've gone into that much work to make it all even. It's ridiculous. They got a guy from overseas to do half the work for them. There's a video about all the work they go into and the amount of different scenarios they have for the fixture is crazy. It's like a full-time.
Yeah,
it's
but
more than a full-time
in
job.
the general Vic bias kind of debate, even though I think Vic bias is a conspiracy theory,
Well,
that makes
Charlie,
no sense.
Vic Bias is forever going to be in the competition because it's more than half the comp is Victorian
that's
teams.
why I'm bringing onto the agenda the fact that some recent news, which is that some of the interstate clubs or the clubs on the West Coast are pushing for,
more fairness.
which
Extra
is
home
something
games
like
or something.
an extra home game to account for gather round, which that's a pretty big ask.
No, it's not. It's
Or-
not a big ask.
or
I'm completely with you.
Yeah, but it's hard to organise that, and then they've also
It is, but it's fair though, isn't
But
it?
what West if Perth?
Why
Well,
should
who loses the home game?
why should
then?
Freo have to play a home game during gather round in Adelaide or
Well, they're not the only
Fremantle
club that has to do that.
or any of the other interstate clubs, and then they miss out on their own home game, and
Ev-
then they have to be in Victoria for most of every other week of the season.
Every club. So if you gave Freo or West Coast an extra home game, so right now you're playing 11 home, 11 away, and gather round. So if they're getting 12,
Well, would it be 11 and 11? It'd be.
That's what it is at the moment.
One of your home games would be in Adelaide during gather round. So
no, because it's an extra round.
okay.
So now the season's 23
yeah.
weeks,
Yeah,
23
okay.
games long.
Right. So that just
So if
that doesn't count as
you
a
couldn't-
home or an away
You couldn't
game.
make West Coast and Freo play one extra home game. Like then you have to take it off a Victorian team.
Yeah, so that wouldn't work, I don't think. But what I'm saying is,
But the other thing is, Sammy, is Victorians, it's like Collingwood. We could be playing Hawks this week, and then next week we've got a home game against Gold Coast, and they're both at the G. You got two games in a row at the MCG.
Yeah, I know that, but
And
you
I
still-
know that
it's
one
still not
game is
gonna be
classified as an away game, and like the Hawthorn game is an away game because you're playing against Hawthorn and their home ground is at the G.
So do you think
Technically, that's just as good as a home game.
do you think we should move into a rolling situation where there are no home and away games between Victorian clubs, and they're just kind of fixtures, so that then you can even out the draw and there's not this sort of arbitrary sort of thing, and then you could probably have more flexibility for teams playing in Tassie or in the Northern Territory or Cairns or whatever, so that then it could be far more even spread amongst the teams, and then you'd split the games, the financial games, financially, like each game down the middle. Was that be an option?
Oh,
It would be quite hard.
It's so tricky. It's hard to answer that.
I
because,
think,
there's so much that goes into it that you need to factor in.
But if you were giving certain teams more home games than others, you would have no option but to do that, because you couldn't have, all right, this year we're giving St Kilda 10 home games and Essendon 10 home games, and all the other Victorian teams get 11 games. Like, it's not going to be fair, is it? Just because Perth and like West Coast and Freo, they have advantages in different ways. Like, they've got a much greater home ground advantage. So I think there's swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, I think there are swings and roundabouts, and it's so hard with working it all out, because meanwhile you've got Collingwood and Hawthorn, who are the tenants at the MCG, and then Carlton, who are pushing for more games at the MCG. Probably
Carlton
Essendon
should make Icon Park their home ground.
Well, that's a crazy sort of.
Why is it
statement.
crazy?
It's not. I mean, I would love that, but I mean, the AFL's never going to do that. So
well, I reckon in 10 years, or in probably, I reckon
if Carlton went back
they
to
need another
being
15 years to develop that Icon Park and make it their own home ground.
If that happened, and like maybe it could, then
You
that
can
would
only
be
play
the
against
best
Gold
thing
Coast.
ever. Yeah, but that would be the thing.
It should happen.
You wouldn't be able to play any good big games between Carlton and Essendon or Carlton Collingwood.
North
No,
Melbourne.
but that's fine. They can play.
Who's
the
going to
smaller
play?
clubs there.
Who's going to play at Marvel then? Because no one seems to want to play there.
Well, that's an issue.
Essendon and Carlton are pushing for more games.
So
there.
is St
St
Kilda.
are.
Yeah, St Kilda are pushing for more games at the G.
So then you're left with Bulldogs
It's
and
just
North
not good
Melbourne.
for Marvel Stadium. No one wants to play there.
Yeah, no one wants to play there. So what? Yeah.
But that's a strange thing.
But what I'm saying is, with all these swings and roundabouts and how hard it is with the fixture, I still think that, while I don't think Vic Bias is a big conspiracy theory that sort of, kind of is this systemic sort of thing. It is true though that
it is true, especially with the commentators.
Adam Simpson, who was captain of North Melbourne for ages, saying that having been coach of West Coast, it's much harder. Damien Hardwick has said he's having a hard time adjusting to travel as a coach of Gold Coast, and the record of premiership victors proves it as of recent, generally. So
Still probably not a large enough sample size.
Yeah, but it's when Collingwood, and okay, maybe not just Collingwood, I'm just saying Collingwood because I know they've got it, have 8 of the last 9 home games at the G, and then you've got these interstate clubs who have to constantly fly. The advantage from being able to stick in one spot for a long period of time is just massive.
Pretty huge, yeah. They don't have to move. They don't have to go on a plane.
Yeah.
A plane ride takes up pretty much your whole day.
Yeah.
It's also not good on the body. It's a huge difference.
And I reckon the way things are tracking, it's going to happen soon. I reckon that things are tracking towards there being more concessions given to...
Or there should be a way that Victorian teams, because most Victorian teams, they travel interstate about 5 times a year, I'm guessing. 5 or 6 times. If they're not playing home games interstate.
Yep.
I feel like Essendon might go, probably 5, 6. And maybe there's a better way that they make it in the fixture that you have to, for fairness, have those interstate trips broken up into sort of equal parts. So you're not finishing the season with a huge run of home games or away games as home games.
Well, they sometimes try to make it so that one travelling team can stay in the same place, for 2 games. Sometimes they do that, but they should prioritise getting that experience for the interstate teams, particularly the ones on the West Coast. Because Sydney, I think, have a great situation. They're a bit like Geelong in terms of it's a pretty short flight to get.
Yeah, well,
I guess it is from Adelaide too.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's not just they're playing away. It's how long is the distance? Perth, WA, they have Perth and whatever they're called, West Coast and Freo, they have to travel 5-6 hours. Whereas Sydney, it's a 50-minute plane ride that's pretty simple and easy. Now, they've got a guy from the US working on this algorithm, whatever it is.
I saw that video, yeah.
Yeah, to come up with this fixture. So it's very technical. And they've got this algorithm, right? So you'd hope that they've got all these, into the calculations. It's a 5-hour plane trip compared to... But I'm worried that I don't even know. But maybe I hope that they factored in that the difference in travel time, because
they must have.
Well, I hope so.
But
this guy's from the US. They've gotten
Yeah.
these external people from the US doing it. So
I think that
hopefully they have factored it all in.
I think there is a point when the West Australian and South Australian supporters get angry. There is a point just to remind them that they joined our competition. We joined theirs.
Yeah, I know, but now it's
that's the one thing that annoys me most is when they talk about premierships. When they're like, "Oh, it doesn't count in the VFL." It's like, well, we didn't join the Sandful. You joined the VFL. You know.
Yeah, that's true. But in terms of, I think that the inherent, even though I think that the grand final should of course beat the MCG, the inherent unfairness of that means that, and that's not going to change. Means that there's going to be more concessions given towards interstate clubs to account for that. Going into the future is what I predict.
It's hard to account for though,
because it doesn't make any.
If
you're going to build a fair league for an interstate competition, if you were starting that from scratch, you wouldn't make it so that no matter what, the grand final is always played in one city, in one ground. And I love that it is, because it's just sort of a little kink in the evolution of the game.
I don't.
And I'm a traditionalist.
I don't like it at all.
Okay, well, let me finish. And
it's not traditional at all anyway. It's not traditional for a waffle person or a sandful person.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, wait, are you talking about grand final?
It's traditional for you VFL folk.
Okay.
Yeah, I asked including yourself.
But
I've
what
been up there in the NEFL, in the NTFL, mate.
I think it's
not traditional for them. It's a disgrace.
I'm saying that it is a...
Vic bias, that's what it is.
Okay, you're just trying to...
I'm being serious.
You're trying to clip something up for the Instagram reel right now.
No, I'm not. I'm just pulling you up.
What I'm saying is, I don't think... Here's two things. It's my opinion, and I think it's what will happen. The grand final is always going to be held at the MCG. I love that because it's a natural kink in the evolution of the game, and it's beautiful. Wait. We'll let you finish in a moment. We'll let you finish in a moment.
Yeah, I will.
All right, but it's always going to stay like that. The Victorian government wants it. I think most AFL fans want it. I don't think.
According to you,
I'd love to know if you got every interstate fan.
Yeah, interstate fans would love it. 50% off flights and 50-50 crowd, they would love it.
I'm saying if you got them to vote on whether they would change it to take it away from always being the MCG, I reckon most footy fans are traditionalists and they like the MCG because it's just a beautiful ground and it's just special. It's a fairy tale.
What do they think?
But
let's find out.
Let's find out. But the fact that it's not going to change, in my opinion, I don't think it will, means that because you would never make that the case if you were starting a league from scratch, it's just not fair. It means that there's just going to be a general shift towards greater concessions to interstate teams to account for it, because I feel like
you can never account for something like that. Never.
Maybe you can never account for it, but you shouldn't change it.
Never account for it.
You shouldn't change it. It is so much more special.
What are you national comp?
No, but people look at Melbourne winning the flag there, and they're just like, it wouldn't mean as much.
Grand finals work. We've seen it.
Grand finals.
It worked tremendously well at Perth Stadium. Tremendously well. Melbourne won. We even had a bloke come down illegally and he had to go to court. Whatever.
Only because we were all locked in our houses.
He snuck into the change room and he got in trouble. People love it. What?
So you're saying that that's the reason why we should do it, so that more people could sneak in.
People
which
are
makes
no
no
sense
because we don't have a pandemic
anymore.
No,
it's not why. It's not why. But the reason why I bring that up is people are going to rock up.
Grand final should be played at 2:30 p.m. on the last Saturday in September at the MCG for infinity. And if it doesn't, it's a disgrace. And I will be marching in the streets.
Okay,
If
agree. West Coast finished first last year after the wretched run they've had, they deserve to have a grand final at home at Perth Stadium.
What I'm saying
is, how good would that be? How good would that be to see West Coast finish on top next season? Harley Reid. And they have a home grand final.
I'd rather see Harley Reid tear it up in the MCG, like where all the other past
you're
greats.
You're a Victorian and you live down the road.
No, because it's where all the other past greats of the game have played.
So what?
They've existed
Couldn't
in that.
care less.
In that
I'd rather see Harley Reid in front of his home fans performing.
Well, then I don't think you would.
To the ground.
MCG, it's a theatre. It's been like that for
decades and decades.
Alex Jazelenko taking that mark. Wayne Harms with the tap. Dom Sheed. Leo Barry, they're all existing.
In the VFL.
They're all on patches of grass.
VFL.
They're all on patches of grass that are just meters away from each other. That's why to see Harley Reid come down or any, I think that's great about it.
Did you see the Central Coast Mariners?
Wait a sec. When any interstate club player comes with the MCG and tears it up and wins a grand final, like Judd or Cousins, it's great because it's like they're in a new territory and they're just sort of solidifying themselves.
This is
kind of in the
this is the
beautiful-
terms
yeah.
that they joined the competition under. There was the sandful.
No, don't say that.
Exactly. There was the sandful, the
The
waffle,
terms. Okay, the terms have changed now, though, Sam.
and the VFL, and they
It's a different competition now.
No, it's the same competition.
It's
Legally,
evolved, yeah.
it's the same competition. The VFL changed its name into the AFL, but it's the exact same entity. So they decided that no, our leagues aren't good enough. We need to combine and create a team. When they created West Coast and when they created Adelaide, and then later when they created Freo and they brought Port Adelaide in, they decided no, we don't want to be in our sandful or our waffle. We want to join the Victorians. And when they did that, they had to accept the fact that this was the Victorian competition for 120 years or whatever it was, and that they needed to accept some fundamental aspects of our competition, which was like grand final being at the MCG. And there has been greater concessions as the game's evolved, which I agree with, but I don't think that that pinnacle of the sport being on the last Saturday of September at the MCG should ever be taken away, so that you can play it at a plastic
the home
stadium
venue
in
of
Perth.
the team that finishes on top.
Yeah, look, I think you're biased, calling it a plastic stadium in Perth because it would have its, its meaningfulness for those fans.
That you don't understand.
That we can't relate to.
That's the issue.
That we can't relate to. However,
no.
Look at Central Coast Mariners. Anyway, I'll let you finish.
Okay, thanks. That's new.
It is. Go on.
So while, you like Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that because it's aesthetically pleasing, and while Optus
Because
Stadium,
you've been there before, right?
yeah, because
You
it's
visited.
Whereas Optus Stadium
I've
doesn't
I've
look
been to
quite as
Adelaide
good.
Oval
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
So have you.
Not for a game, but I've been. Yeah,
There you go. You haven't been to Perth, so you got no idea.
I'm the one I'm about to defend Perth.
I know
'cause
you
I
are,
think that calling it a plastic stadium is wrong because it's got its own meaning for fans.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are. I do think that there would be fans in Perth who connect to that stadium over time.
Just as much as
And it's
how much we connect to
And
the
it's
MCG.
No.
and it's more beautiful
no.
because it's a new stadium, so they can forge that connection. They can watch it.
Yeah,
sort of
they're
happen.
locals. Yep.
There's we have an affection for the MCG, and so do most Australians. And I'm sure that they do have an affection for Optus Stadium, but it's 2 or 3 years old. Like it can't, and there's no history.
They've got an affection for the people they go to the footy with, which has been happening for years.
Yeah.
And for their own state. So that's the other thing. I know. Okay, yeah, per stadium, whatever. But that's that history will grow. If it feels that they had the Wacker, they had Subiaco, the history's
think
deep
that
and rich.
It's like grand final being at the MCG is like Wimbledon being at Wimbledon, or the FA Cup being at Wembley.
Yeah.
It is so inherently tied to that event that you can't take it away. And that is why a lot of Melbourne supporters you speak to talk about that itch isn't scratched yet because they haven't seen their team win a game
I
at
never
the
said
MCG.
that I don't want a grand final at the MCG every season. I'm just asking.
What? So you've turned.
I'm asking for fairness.
What? Okay.
I want a best of two.
Let me say something.
No.
I want it. No, listen.
Let me say something right now. Then we'll get to. It's a whole
I said
other.
something
Don't
big.
open that.
Best of two.
Okay, we'll get to that. That
Best
makes no sense.
Best of two.
That makes no sense.
I've got some explaining to do.
Yeah. Okay, but let me just say one thing.
It makes a lot of sense,
All right.
by the way.
I think fully agree with Sam. I want the grand final to always be the MCG because of what I said about how it's where all the moments are in that one bit of land. There's something so beautiful about it and just so special.
Yep, well said.
I think that at the same time, you can't just have that sort of defeatist view of new stadiums. Like, I know it's
That's
only
not
2 or 3
defeatist.
years old, but once the MCG was only 2 or 3 years old and you imbue the history with,
But it's not there
moments
yet.
that come.
That's
Yeah,
not
it's
what I
not
meant.
there yet, but you still need to have things
I'm
that
sure.
happen.
I'm sure. To use your favorite word, Optus Stadium has some aura to it.
It does. I'm sure it does.
But it's also in the name. Like it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
fucking commercialized
That's true.
stadium.
That's true.
That's
true.
why I call it plastic,
Yeah.
and it's new, and it
Yeah.
and like the MCG.
This is going
the
to sit very well with the
the
Wacker locals, I tell you.
MCG
I said Wacker with W.
as a concrete is
Jungle.
still a concrete bowl,
Juggernaut.
but it does have that aura to it, and
Yeah.
Adelaide Oval does have it. I don't know if Optus has aura.
It certainly does.
Well,
Every stadium's got
It
aura.
doesn't look like it on TV.
Every stadium has aura.
I haven't been there.
Yeah,
so.
it depends.
It's,
I think
it's
there's
the game
a different,
of AFL football.
Yeah,
There's aura everywhere.
I think
gets
for
played.
for all players, aura comes in different ways in different stadiums. Like Caleb Sarong was actually talking about how Marvel's got. He didn't use the word aura, but it's quite a strange atmosphere because of the roof, and it feels like everything echoes, and it's more intense to play underneath, which was quite interesting. But what I think is an interesting discussion, which we don't have to have right now, though, is how just in general, just how the architecture of a stadium lends itself to being seeming more prestigious, which it just does. Like the MCG and Adelaide Oval seem more prestigious and more historical and more beautiful and better for big moments than Optus Oval because of that sort of
Optus Stadium
aesthetic
is
kind of plasticity.
What's
I don't know where this plastic is coming from because of their age.
Do you like brutalist architecture? Are you a fan of brutalist architecture? Because
all I know is that it's not plastic. It's just because it's 2 years old doesn't mean it's plastic.
Okay, but Marvel, say for example,
the MCG, the Shane Warne stand is plastic.
Marvel's
been renamed.
Marvel's been around.
It just doesn't make sense.
Marvel's been around for long enough to generate more aura than it does. It does have a certain level of atmosphere that I've always appreciated when you're in there and the roof's up, and it just makes me think of was Moorcroft's Mark in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the what's the Bali bombing survivor?
Jason McCarthy.
Yeah, it's had those moments, and I think of Marvel when I think of those. So I think that's got a little bit of atmosphere, but not enough for what you'd want, this far into its life. So I think when you build a stadium, you want it to have that sort of, that sort of architectural feel, which Optus Stadium doesn't have.
Yeah.
But
I
haven't
you
been
let that roll off your tongue way too easily.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I haven't been. That didn't come off my tongue easily. But it's a good point.
Not roll off your tongue.
But I think that, to get it straight back, this is the last thing I'll say, that's never going to change, and it never should. The grand final should always be at the MCG, but because it makes no sense, then I still think it does make sense. I think it's better for the game overall. Truly, I do think that. But because it makes no sense on a fairness level, more concessions will come. But I want those concessions to interstate clubs to be less about access to players with academies, because seeing all of Sydney's players makes me furious. And more to do with, I guess, general logistical things. I don't think that the increasing in concessions should be like greater academy rights, because I think they're far enough.
Down a wonky path there with concessions.
Well, Perth.
Concessions because the grand final is played in Melbourne. Like
the Perth and Adelaide.
How many concessions do you have to give to justify it? It's the grand final. This is the pinnacle game. This is what your club's success is based off. How many premierships you've won. The concessions are never ending here if you want it to be fair. The only way to completely make it fair is to have what I just said before. This is one idea. I don't know if this is the solution, but a best of 2 grand final. You play
best of 2 or best of 3?
Well, best of 3 would mean that one venue. Well, okay. Best of 3. You'd have one neutral venue, then you'd play the other one at one of the team's home ground, and the other one, the last game, perhaps the last game can be at the grand final of the team that finished higher.
At the home ground of the team that finished higher.
Yeah. Okay, so but what I think is 3 games too many. So you go best of 2 then. And then it'd be aggregate score.
Okay, there you go.
That's pretty cool.
Aggregate score.
That's pretty cool.
Is that really what you... Okay, you're obviously being a bit provocative right now.
I'm not. This is better than what we've got at the moment, Charlie.
This
one grand final thing. West Coast have to come all the way to Melbourne to try and win a grand final.
This one grand final.
They won't win one in 50 years.
It's
a disgrace.
Max,
it's actually disrespectful.
Max, I think that you are ridiculous in asking for a best of 2 or best of 3. But I do actually agree. I think a best of 2 aggregate would make more sense than a best of 3, because then you could still have the first one, say if it was interstate, you could have it somewhere, and then you could have the second one at the G.
At the G, yes.
And the final one and the game would still finish at the G, and the score would all be the same, and both teams would be playing to win, as opposed to one team playing to win and one team playing not to lose.
And
which is what I hate about a best of 3, is that it would be shit to go to a game and one team can win the flag and another can't. I understand how it works.
That 3rd game.
Yeah, I know, but
sometimes it's just you win the second, it's all over.
In a close game, it's not as exciting.
Yeah, I agree. They just give up and You'd save your energy.
But also, it's just not feasible. You can't finish the season almost a month later for two teams and not for the others.
Yeah, well, that's best of 3. But I reckon best of 2. Aggregate's a big call. It's a big change to the game.
I don't mind it. Because it would mean that you would just think about the games.
It's fair. That's the biggest thing about all this.
Yeah. Imagine
fairness.
If more things were done by aggregate. Think about how the games would progress. It would be like teams would be trying so hard.
You know what though?
They couldn't turn off at all.
What if it rains in one of the games? Like,
what if instead of having 2 elimination finals every year, you just had 2 games, but the only team that got through was the one who's won by the most points?
Yeah, it's so hard to work all this out, but it just needs to be fairer. The grand final at the G every year just doesn't cut it. I'm interested to see. Like, we put out a poll, right? But the poll is going to be
You're flip-flopping. You've said I didn't say I didn't want it. Now you're saying you don't.
Well, best of 2 is not going to work. Best of 3 questions on that as well.
It's pretty simple. Just keep it the same, and then
it's not fair though. Fairness. Now, this is the other thing, right? We put out a poll.
Well, you know where the
what do you think about the MCG being played in Melbourne every year? And guess who's going to vote? 80% of the voters, 90% will be from Victoria. They're all going to say, yeah, it's fine. I want to know what the people from interstate, what they think.
That's what I called for earlier. I'd love to hear them because I wouldn't be... I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to make any calls, but surely some of them still want at the MCG.
Melbourne is the mecca of Australian rules football. And grand final is our Ramadan. Or whatever.
Yeah. If you start to take away...
And everyone comes here for the grand final.
It's true.
And I think... Like, I've got friends that support interstate teams, and I've never heard any of them say, I wish the grand final... They love the fact that you book your flight to Melbourne for the grand final and then win it.
How cool is it?
They're so conditioned to it.
Conquering another city. Like, it's just cool that West Coast came over and just beat Collingwood on their own turf in 2018.
But it's so hard to do, though.
It's hard to do. But I think that the fairness and sort of the evening up factor probably occurs through the, as we all know, the advantage of having games at your own stadium and the umpiring decisions that come from umpires not wanting to make controversial calls against the tenant team, which is why stuff like the Lockie Sullivan thing, that's just the ledger evening up. So if you think about it philosophically, Max, you can't get too angry about that because that's just the ledger evening up.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the actual stats on this, but just based off memory and what usually happens, I would say that although Victorian teams seem to be winning grand finals more often in the last 10 years than non-Victorian teams, that non-Victorian teams make the finals more often. Like, often you look at the finals and...
Yeah, they do. Well, they get the advantage.
There's 10 Victorian teams and there is 8 non-Victorian teams. There were what used to be 6. And I feel like most years it's like 4 interstate, 4 Victorian.
Yeah. And then if you think about the dynasties and also the worst teams, they're often Victorian teams.
Yeah.
Hawthorn, Geelong, Richmond, and then Carlton, Melbourne... North Melbourne,
Richmond back in the day when they were terrible.
Yeah,
so cellar dwellers are often West Coast are never down for too long. Neither are Adelaide.
Look, at the end of the day, I think the fairness. I've got faith in the AFL and what they're doing in terms of fairness in the comp. I don't think too much actually has to change, but just that grand final thing. I'm like, I don't know. I think there's a bit more thinking that needs to be done with it. Something that just can make it a bit more fairer. I don't know. Maybe you fly, like you make the crowd 50-50, and it's hard to do that when it's GWS Collingwood because GWS don't have 50,000 fans.
The crowd is 50-50 in terms of membership split.
Yes, that's true. But it never ends up being 50-50 overall.
AFL,
yeah. It's just that and that's the thing. Like, if it's West Coast playing Collingwood in Perth, well then there's probably going to be more Eagles fans there. But if it's the other way around and it's in Melbourne, plus Collingwood will dominate.
You want the most people there. If there's 100,000 seat stadium,
it's always going to be sold out, I think.
Yeah.
But it's just anyway, we'll move on. Mort's Meets Tipster of the week this week is, yes, believe it or not, it is Sarah Mortimer. That's the sister of Mike Mortimer, who runs Mort's Meats. So, well done to Sarah. The only one to tip 9 out of 9. That's a huge effort.
9 out of 9.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's good.
It's hard to do. So, well done to Sarah. Brilliant work. And the leader of the comp, and Sarah, just to let you know, to claim the prize, just message the page and you'll get ticked off and you'll have your $10 prize thanks to Mort's Meats. Jordan Sussage.
Or you can just call your brother.
She is still on top. 71 for her. She's leading ahead of 2 others, Michael and Gary. So well done to Jordan. She's on top of the head over the footy tipping comp. That's the end of it, guys. Episode, what was it? It was the round 11 review and episode 21, I believe. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Episode 22, in fact. And yeah, make sure you give us a nice follow, subscribe, whatever you need to do to keep in touch with our content. But thanks, Sammy. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, that's it.
Brilliant chat, boys. We'll see you next time.